fact, there was never a conspiracy. Nothing had been worked out. Nothing. We just met the day before on the 17th.
Unexpectedly, on August 17th, Prime Minister Pavlov called a cabinet meeting to discuss the draft Union Treaty. Just Pavlov and his deputies. Pavlov was very critical. He said, "I don't care what they say. That treaty won't work. They're playing political games. These games will lead to trouble."
A treaty transforming the Soviet Union was to be signed on August 20th. The treaty removed power from the center and handed it to the republics. Now, at the last moment, Prime Minister Pavlov and his cabinet were calling the carefully negotiated agreement into question.
I was driving home. Gorbachev called me in my car from his vacation home in the Crimea. I couldn't get a word in. He was swearing his head off. I tried to tell him I wasn't alone. Normally when he calls my car, we stopped and the driver gets out and I stay alone. But my wife was with me. The driver got out. I gestured for her to follow. Gorbachev was swearing away. I tried to get him to tone it down, because my wife could hear. I said, "Please, Mikhail Sergeyevich, don't interrupt," he said. Gorbachev said, "Don't you understand? If there's no treaty, there'll be civil war. The state is falling apart."
Meanwhile, Prime Minister Pavlov made his way to a KGB compound south of Moscow. There he joined KGB Chief Khrushchev, Chief of Staff to the President Boldin, and the Minister of Defense, Yazov. The interviews that follow are taken from the prosecutor's interrogations of those arrested after the coup.
We talked about the Union Treaty, to be signed in 2 days. We were all sure it meant the end of the Soviet Union.
We decided we needed a state of emergency. The economy was disintegrating. We had to avert famine and the collapse of the state.
What were you planning to tell Gorbachev?
First, we wanted to tell him our views, then to get his opinion. We wanted to say to him, we have to take steps to stabilize the situation. Those steps may be unpopular, but we have no alternative. In any case, we believe the people will back our actions.
We felt Gorbachev was no longer able to cope with his roles as an active statesman. It had become increasingly apparent that either he had lost control or he was simply burnt out. Then we decided to go and see him.
See who?
Mikhail Gorbachev. We chose the team we would send.
They decided that a delegation should fly to see Gorbachev in the Crimea the next day. After the coup, Gorbachev described what happened.
I went over to invite them in. They'd already gone into my office. I wasn't used to such conduct, such familiarity. They were led by the head of my presidential staff, Boldin.
We deliberately chose Boldin because we needed someone who the president really trusted. Gorbachev trusted him. Bolton could persuade him that the situation really required these steps.
Bolton's involvement shocked them both, especially Raisa. He was a close family friend as well as a colleague. They went way back to 1978, when Gorbachev came to Moscow. I said I wouldn't resign or put my name on their decree. I said, who has sent you here? I'm not a fool. They said, we've set up a committee. I asked, what committee? Who were the members? As they listed the names, I began writing down their names on a scrap of paper that was on my desk.
After the group had left, Mikhail Sergeyevich came out. He looked shaken. He was holding a piece of paper.
The last name on Gorbachev's list was Anatoly Lukyanov, the Speaker of the Supreme Soviet, the second most powerful man in the Soviet hierarchy.
Lukyanov was one of the names. His name was in lowercase and small letters. Next to his name was a question mark. We weren't sure if he was on the committee or not.
I couldn't help putting a question mark next to his name. We'd known each other since college. For 40 years. I knew his position was crucial. He was chairman of the Supreme Soviet. If he had publicly opposed the coup, it would have collapsed.
The delegation departed, leaving Gorbachev a prisoner in his own compound. Chernayev ran across to Gorbachev's villa.
Raisa couldn't believe it. She said, what nerve. They just marched in. They never even said hello.
When we realized we were under arrest, and when we discovered who the conspirators were, we were terribly hurt. We felt bitterly betrayed.
So then we put extra guards around Gorbachev's house. We completely isolated him. Then we cut off all his phones. We did that so that we'd have a few clear days to impose order.
My husband has 8 or 10 phones. I don't remember exactly how many. He tried them one by one, but they were all dead. Even the military hotline. We have a military hotline in each of our homes. That phone is kept under a cover. No one is allowed to touch it, even to dust it. He took off the cover, lifted the handset, and it was dead. Then we knew. That was that. That was that.
On Sunday afternoon, we went out for a drive in the woods. Suddenly, out of the dark forest, this snow-white car appeared, like a specter. A man got out and told me I was wanted on the phone. It was the head of the KGB, Khrushchev. He said a very serious problem has come up and asked me to come to Moscow. They even had a plane waiting for me.
He didn't know why we sent for him.
What exactly did you tell him?
I told him we had to talk to him as foreign minister. That was all I told him. I didn't say anything else.
It was late when I got to the Kremlin. I walked into Pavlov's office. All the top leaders were there except Gorbachev. No one took the lead. They were sitting at the long table or milling around. The chairman's desk was not occupied.
The foreign minister entered Prime Minister Pavlov's office to find the coup leaders: KGB Chief Khrushchev, Defense Minister Yazov, Prime Minister Pavlov, and Vice President Yanayev, the men who organized the trip down to the Crimea. Speaker of the Soviet Parliament Lukyanov had been called back from his vacation, like Foreign Minister Besmertnik. All waited for the news.
Our delegation came back from Gorbachev with long faces. He had dismissed them. What they claimed he'd said, do it. You'll see what happens.
The majority of people there, even members of the committee, had no idea what was going on.
Khrushchev took me next door. He said, we're forming an emergency committee to govern the country in this state of emergency. You're going to be on it. I asked quietly, is this Gorbachev's idea? Is this his solution to the crisis? He hesitated for a moment and then said, no, Gorbachev is seriously ill. Then I said, no, I won't be a member of that committee.
I vividly remember what Lukyanov said. He said, give me your plan. Show me what you have in mind. I said, there is no plan.
After the coup, Lukyanov gave the Soviet parliament his version of how he had reacted.
I immediately told the plotters that as chairman of the Supreme Soviet, I had no intention of taking part in the work of that emergency committee. And I said I'm not going to sign any of your documents.
Lukyanov had not revealed the full story.
Lukyanov said he wouldn't have anything to do with it. The only thing he would do was publish a statement in the name of the Supreme Soviet saying that Gorbachev's Union Treaty, which was to be signed on the 20th, was unconstitutional.
Lukyanov was the guardian of the Soviet Constitution. He was saying Gorbachev's Union Treaty was illegal and therefore provided a justification for the coup. But the conspirators also needed a public reason for acting quickly.
At that point, we realized we had to make Vice President Yanayev the president. According to the Constitution, the Vice President takes over if the President is ill.
We needed Vice President Yanayev to sign our statement. Although Gorbachev wasn't sick at all, we had to make it look as if he were. And we told him, you have to sign. There's no going back now.
They drew up a statement saying Vice President Yanayev was assuming power due to Gorbachev's ill health.
The statement began making the rounds. That little piece of paper went from Yanayev to me, from me to Yazov, then back to Yanayev again. Nobody wanted to sign it.
Finally, at 4 in the morning, we signed the statement. Yanayev signed first. Then he and Pavlov signed an appeal to the nation. Yanayev insisted we put our signatures on it so we would all be responsible.
27 years earlier, General Secretary Nikita Khrushchev had been removed from power by his closest associates while on sabbatical in the Crimea.
You could see they were scared. I don't think they expected my reaction. They thought I could be removed quietly, like Khrushchev. There was no question of my agreeing with them. They could not just remove me.
At the headquarters of Yeltsin's Russian Republic, everyone was trying to find out what was going on.
When Yeltsin arrived, I heard a roar from the crowd. So I hung up the phone and started running out. And I ran down there to where you see the blue car. There was a tank down there, and Yeltsin was already on top of it. You couldn't get through the crowd. Getting on the tank was difficult. I didn't want to dirty my white shirt. But the crowd lifted me right up on the tank.
Citizens of Russia, on the night of August 18th, 1991, the lawfully elected president was deposed. Let us be clear. We are dealing with an unconstitutional, reactionary coup.
During the 1917 revolution, leaders had to have one quality. They had to have powerful voices. Lenin's voice wasn't loud, but it was penetrating. And of course, Lenin also spoke there from the tank. Here, we are in a situation similar to 1917.
I call on all soldiers and police to disobey orders. Take no part in this reactionary coup. We call for a general strike.
Although Yeltsin's statements swiftly hit the streets, he had no access to television, which was under the control of the new regime. They repeatedly broadcast the statement by Speaker Lukyanov attacking the Union Treaty.
A statement from Lukyanov, Speaker of the Supreme Soviet of the USSR.
I immediately went to see Lukyanov. I asked him, what's going on? He said, I refuse to join the coup. I said, I don't understand this. So why are they broadcasting your statement? You had no reason to attack the Union Treaty. We had discussed Novo Ogoryovo and thoroughly examined it. We had all agreed to it. He said, that's my business.
Speaker Lukyanov was the only person with the authority to recall the Supreme Soviet, and only the Supreme Soviet could declare a state of emergency illegal. He chose not to assemble it for a full 7 days.
As you know, you need at least 4 days to set up a session. Normally, it takes 5 or 6 days, no less than that.
In contrast, Yeltsin ordered an emergency meeting of his Russian legislature to start in 2 days. People quickly identified the Soviet White House as the seat of resistance to the coup.
They had a small Sony radio with rundown batteries. We sat in a circle on the floor. The president, myself, Raisa, and the kids in the middle. We kept turning it around to improve the reception.
Gorbachev's staff had also managed to fix up a primitive antenna for the TV. He watched the spokesman of the coup hold a press conference.
I should tell you immediately that we have the support of the regions and the absolute majority of the Republican leaders. Our intention is to restore order and save the country.
I saw Yanaev's trembling hands at the press conference and knew we weren't in for a happy ending. I'm used to Gorbachev's composure, his self-confidence when he is on camera, the way he can ad-lib in public. And I began to have my doubts.
We will do everything to ensure that force isn't used against civilians. We must do everything to prevent excesses.
In the middle of the night, Gorbachev recorded a message to the world on the family video recorder.
Everything that Yanaev said and the arguments which the committee have used are outrageous lies. This is treason, an anti-state crime. The decision to make Yanaev president and all subsequent decisions are illegal.
Inside the Kremlin, Gorbachev's supporters were desperate to find out what had happened to him.
I went downstairs to see Yanaev. Yanaev was incoherent. He was very nervous. He said, "Gorbachev's sick. He's incapacitated. He's had it. We had to do this. It was for the best." I said, "Do what you want, but I'm not playing your game." He said, "Don't go, stay here." "No," I told him. "I'm going."
Gorbachev loyalists began to plan their opposition, separated only by a corridor from the offices of the coup leaders.
I said, I'm going to resign. Someone said, you mustn't. If we go, who's going to control the foreign ministry?
The foreign minister was finally tracked down and was asked to sign their statement condemning the coup.
Primakov told him, "Bakatin and I have written a joint statement." He read the text. It was brief. Then he put down the phone and told us that Besmertnik said he couldn't sign a statement against the coup. He felt his duty as a minister was to explain the takeover abroad. So he didn't sign our statement.
When I got to the Russian White House, I had to cross over the barricades. And it was hard for me because of my leg. I have a war wound. Suddenly, some kids appeared completely out of the blue. Someone shouted my name, and it acted like a magnet. So they picked me up, and they carried me over the barricades. They formed a passageway through the crowd so I could get through.
Yeltsin's White House was now surrounded by a human shield. Inside, thanks to a failure of the coup leaders, the telephone still worked.
Western leaders have made their position clear. President Bush, Mr. Mitterrand, and others have said everything. Now is the time for us to act. We must overthrow this junta.
We didn't even cut off the phones inside the White House. Nothing like that was done. We thought we just had to make a declaration and the people would say, get on with it.
It was the coup leaders who made the next move. They declared a curfew for Tuesday evening. Rumors spread that the White House would be stormed that night.
I guarantee, Yazov said, that the army won't attack. I called one of Yeltsin's aides and told him what Yazov had said. He said, yes, we know, but there are other forces. What about the KGB troops?
KGB deserters told us that the KGB had a detailed plan to seize the White House. An elite group of the KGB, called Alpha Group, specializes in such things. Their orders were to destroy the first 2 floors of the building. They would machine gun everything. Their main task was to seize me, and if I tried to escape, they would have shoot me.
Suddenly, I heard people shouting, "Shevardnadze! Shevardnadze's coming!" We were on the balcony. We could see the whole square. It was just packed with people. And then, in the center, I saw the white hair of Shevardnadze.
The fate of our nation is being decided. The future of democracy and freedom is being decided. Long live the people. To our youth, who make up the majority here, I salute you all.
The emergency session of the Russian parliament refused to let Yeltsin go. A delegation was appointed to accompany Khrushchev on a mission to see Gorbachev.
I received a call in my car. It was Yeltsin. He said, I've agreed with Khrushchev to fly down to see Gorbachev in the Crimea at 6 p.m. But the Supreme Soviet won't let me go. They say it's too dangerous. They were right. It was dangerous. I said to Yeltsin, I'll go or Primakov, but you shouldn't.
The news filtered back to the Russian parliament. Khrushchev, Yazov, and Lukyanov were seen heading for the airport. The coup leaders left for the Crimea without the delegation.
The coup leaders have all left for the airport. Wait a second. We don't know what they're planning.
At that point, it was a race. We were worried because they had taken 2 planes. The coup leaders flew to Gorbachev in one plane, and the presidential plane was empty. We feared they might take Gorbachev somewhere else.
The delegation appointed by the Russian parliament rushed to the airport. But in the race to get to Gorbachev, the coup leaders had an hour's head start.
The plotters of the coup have flown secretly to Gorbachev. They've misled us. They've tricked us all. We're afraid of what might happen to Gorbachev.
Vadim Bakatin was at a press conference when he heard that the plotters had gone.
The aircraft steps had been removed and the engines were running. I was mad with myself and with that press conference. I grabbed a microphone from a technician. I couldn't hear what they were saying because of the noise. So I said, tell them Bakatin is here, stop the engines and bring back the steps. Finally, they got the message. The engines were turned off and the stairs put back.
Bakatin's late arrival delayed taking off by 20 minutes. Minutes that were to prove vital.
I took 28 armed men with me. We were ready for anything. Our only purpose was to leave with the president, whatever condition he was in.
Gorbachev's allies were flying into territory still controlled by the coup leaders. They could have been rushing headfirst into a trap.
The Marines had been ordered to attack our plane when it landed. We could have been fired at if we had landed 20 minutes earlier. So you could say we had a narrow escape.
The coup leaders were still an hour ahead of their pursuers.
Suddenly, the masseuse, Tanya, a large woman, came running in. "What's going on?" she shouted. I went out to the balcony, and I saw the limos, one after another, coming down the driveway.
They told me that the coup leaders had arrived in the Crimea on the presidential plane to talk and to take me back to Moscow.
I stood at the top of the stairs. The office is on the second floor. From there, I could see the driveway. They were getting out of the cars, one after another. Lukyanov, Ivashko, Khrushchev, Baklanov, Yazov. I stood there above them. I can see it now. We sized each other up. Then they started bowing to me.
This was the moment the coup collapsed. 3 days earlier, the conspirators demanded Gorbachev's resignation. Now they came to capitulate.
I wanted to sink into the ground. I felt eternally guilty for what we had done to Gorbachev and Raisa. I felt guilty in front of the people and the party.
The plane carrying Gorbachev's allies finally landed. They were afraid that the plotters had taken Gorbachev hostage.
We decided the politicians would go first. Rutskoy, Silayev, Bakatin, and myself. If we hadn't returned in 3 hours, our armed men would follow us.
We heard our friends had arrived, the second delegation. They were in the dining room. Gorbachev and I went in, and there they were. Silayev, Rutskoy, Primakov, Bakatin, and 6 or 7 Russian deputies. Gorbachev went in first. They simply dived on him. They started hugging him, kissing him on the cheek, especially Rutskoy.
We expected him to look ill. But he came in cheerful, smiling, and swearing his head off. He didn't mince words. He called a spade a spade. It was a coup. It was treachery.
Gorbachev told them he refused to speak with the waiting conspirators.
Gorbachev said, "I'll only talk to Lukyanov, no one else." Primakov and I stayed in the room. Lukyanov came in. Gorbachev sat there, Lukyanov here, Primakov over there.
Lukyanov tried to justify his actions. Gorbachev responded with a stream of 4-letter words. "You're the top lawyer of our whole country. Why didn't you uphold the law? You're the president of the Supreme Soviet. Yeltsin called his legislature. Why didn't you call ours? You should have thrown yourself at the tanks to defend that constitution you always wave around."
Lukyanov said there was nothing I could do. Gorbachev said, why didn't you stand with Yeltsin? Why didn't you support Yeltsin? Then Gorbachev said, get out. Wait out there.
Then Gorbachev met a small group of journalists who had managed to get on the plane with his rescuers.
I took the president in my plane, together with my guards. I also took KGB Chief Khrushchev on board with me as a hostage, just in case. In those hours, anything could have happened.
To get Khrushchev to board our plane, we promised him a private talk with Gorbachev. So he came in. Once on board, we arrested him.
As they landed in Moscow, they were unsure who was in control of the airport.
I told the crew not to turn off the engines. If we were fired at, my security chief would jump out of the airplane with his machine gun. He would fight to the end, and we would take off again. The crew agreed. We were all ready. Even those who'd betrayed Gorbachev were there to meet him. You could sense their hypocrisy and treachery. How low can you stoop to betray a man and then go to meet him at the airport?
The next morning, the Russian legislature met triumphant. Yeltsin announced the arrest of the coup leaders.
A group has gone to arrest Yanayev, and Minister of the Interior, Pugo.
At first, we couldn't find Pugo for a long time. We used a neighbor's phone to call him. An old man answered, and we asked him to open the door. The old man was shaking. We asked, has something happened? He nodded his head. What we saw when we went into the room was a horrific scene. There, wearing a jogging suit, was Pugo. He'd shot himself in the mouth. There was blood everywhere. His wife lay on the floor, covered in blood, with 2 gunshot wounds.
While Yeltsin rode the wave of anti-communist revolution, Gorbachev still clung to the party which had brought him to power.
As long as I have the strength, I see it as my duty to cleanse the Communist Party of reactionary forces and drive them out of the party.
I said to Gorbachev, it's the worst press conference you've ever given in your life. I understand he'd been isolated and imprisoned for 3 days. He didn't understand what had happened here. He was obsessed by the coup and the coup plotters. What he said was totally irrelevant under the circumstances. He went on about the press and internal party arguments.
The people had now rejected the Communist Party. Vast crowds toured Moscow to watch the symbols of Soviet power swing from the noose.
When we met, Yeltsin gave me a brief summary of my minister's reaction to the coup, but I haven't read it yet.
Read it. Read it out loud.
Михаил Сергеевич, зачитайте этот документ. Это стенографическая запись заседания кабинета.
They're the minutes of the Soviet cabinet session on the 19th, a meeting held when the Supreme Soviet faced armed attack.
Штурм Дома Советов.
Я сейчас это сделаю. Я до конца.
Gorbachev cannot escape blame for the coup. Who chose those people? He did. He confirmed them. He was betrayed by the people closest to him.
Okay, they saved democracy. But President Gorbachev, he did his part too. He was under pressure, but he didn't give in. They were all together. He was a prisoner on his own. They showed no understanding, neither political nor human.
Allow me to sign a decree halting the activity of the Russian Communist Party.
Boris Nikolaevich, Boris Nikolaevich, Boris Nikolaevich.
Yeltsin, by signing this decree, was throwing a direct challenge to the country's most senior communist.
Be democratic. Show tolerance in everything. You must be Democrats to the end. Only then will the people be with you.
Now, 6 days after the coup, Gorbachev spent the morning discussing whether he should resign as General Secretary, administering the final blow to the party.
After a while, I told them, this is a meaningless conversation. We're talking about something that doesn't exist anymore. It's like, how shall I put it? It's like trying to offer tea to a corpse and arguing about the best way to do it.
For me, that was a big personal tragedy. I was near the final lap. I put all my energy into reforming the party. I wanted to make it truly democratic. A party close to the people and not a party of governing elite.
In the months since the ill-fated August coup, Gorbachev has witnessed the collapse of the Soviet state and the emergence of 11 independent republics. Ironically, Gorbachev's perestroika proved to be the reform program which eliminated his position in the new Commonwealth. Although Gorbachev retains a solid place in history, the future of the Soviet system is unknown. On December 25, 1991, Mikhail Gorbachev resigned, and the Soviet flag was lowered, closing the final chapter of the Second Russian Revolution.